Hello and welcome everyone. Today's date is October 29th, 2024, and we have a wonderful guest today. We have the mayor-elect, Sean Cameron.
Hi, thanks for welcoming me to the show tonight.
Of course, of course. Thanks for coming, Sean. Before we get into anything, I want to reduce the pressure and I want to get into some quick 11 or 10 questions here. And you just either can answer, choose one or the other. So, for example, let's say cat or dog.
Okay,
You could say cat or dog, whatever your preference is, or you could pass if
sure.
said question is too hot or too much to handle. So let's begin. Sean, Montreal Canadiens or Toronto Maple Leafs?
Toronto Maple Leafs.
I had a feeling you might say that actually.
Actually, Boston's my team, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Next time. NHL or NBA?
NHL.
NHL. Okay. Christmas or Halloween?
I'd say Christmas.
Christmas.
More family.
More family oriented. Okay. Fair enough. Wheel pizza or Kenny's pizza?
There's no comparison. Wheel.
That's a good answer, Sean. I don't know how you'd be able to walk around with your head held high.
Well,
after.
the wheel's kind of the bar you set, and all other pizza is measured from that.
Yeah, they're close to town hall too. So
Yeah, that's right.
TV shows or movies?
Probably movies.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Country music or gospel music?
Ooh, I'd probably say country on that one.
Country on that.
Although I sing in a church choir for 35 years. So
Yeah, that's why I thought like the question would be awesome. I
Yeah.
was thinking like maybe he listens to a lot of gospel. Mom and Dad used to do that. Summer or winter?
I'd say summer.
Summer. Okay.
Used to be winter when
Yeah.
I played hockey and skied. But
Mhm.
now, getting older, kind of like you like the sun.
Slowing down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps you. It's better for you. I think the heat, anyways, feel better. Coffee or tea?
That's a mixed one because it's usually coffee in the morning and then tea in the afternoon at
Later
supper
on.
time.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Beer or wine?
Beer.
Beer. Okay, good answer. Now this is an interesting one. Wayne Gretzky or Mario Lemieux?
I'd have to say the great one, Wayne.
Wayne.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure how you'd answer that one. And I wasn't sure how you felt about hockey, but I had a good feeling. I'll just throw these on for a second just
Sure.
to get a sense of how we are, Sean. So, Sean, thanks again for coming, my man. Newly elected mayor of Antigonish, Nova Scotia. How have you been?
I've been good. It's busy last couple of months, but
Mhm.
since the election, things have slowed down. Items like this have popped up.
Right.
Can you give me an interview? Can you give me your perception? So I have a little window before we actually get sworn in as mayor, so this is
Mhm.
kind of nice.
Okay, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
How much time until that happens, till you're sworn in?
Thursday, November the 7th,
Okay.
so about a week.
You got some time. Well, let's go back to your beginning, Sean. Let's like find out who you are a little bit here. So, where are you originally from?
Well, I'm kind of a homegrown boy, born and raised in Antigonish. I'm number 7 of 9 children.
Oh, wow,
My
okay.
father was from Antigonish, served in World War II, and after World War II became the chief of police in Mulgrave, where he met my mom, and then her father had worked for the CNR police, so then Dad switched from Mulgrave to the CN police. Back
Mhm.
then it was a big thing, so he moved to North Sydney, and then back in 1960, he was going to be transferred to Moncton, wasn't kind of keen on the idea, and decided to quit that and come to Antigonish, where he worked for the casket office for his career.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And so, what was your experience kind of growing up in Antigonish during that time?
Well, we had a great neighborhood. Right off McClellan Street, I actually lived next
Yeah, yeah.
door to where I grew up.
Okay.
But our house was the end of the street when we were
Mhm.
kids. There was probably about 75 children in our neighborhood. Most of the families were single income families. Some had double income where both parents had worked. But relatively large families, like 6, 7, 8 children in
Right.
the neighborhoods. And I grew up, but we were quite active in sports. Track and field was kind of my big sport. I loved hockey because of the team thing. Basketball wasn't big on my thing. But, you know, in grade 6, my first exposure to basketball, we made the Crusaders. And
Okay.
I was fast, something
Yep,
like yourself.
yep,
So
yep.
the coaches can see something in that. And like,
Yeah.
okay, we
Yeah.
do something with this kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
That's
and
for sure.
but as the winter season get on and as you get better in track and field, it's no different than sports now.
Yes.
Sports tend to be a year-long commitment now.
Mm-hmm.
So hockey's 12 months of the year, and track started interfering with hockey and interfering with other sports. So we weren't much in volleyball or basketball. So it was hockey. Because my older brother had played hockey.
Yes.
My younger brother Paul had played hockey. So it was a natural fit. We'd just kind of go in there. But yeah, so kind of grew up in Antigonish. After high school, went on to St. FX, graduated, got a job, moved to Sydney, met and married a local girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Sydney wasn't our cup of tea. Moved back to Antigonish and then jumped about 2 jobs and then landed at community services and been there for 31 years. So it's kind of established and set my family, and that's your career path, right? So here we are 31 years later.
Wow. Wow. So you've been working, dealing with people this whole time, you know, helping people in whatever situation. Like community services obviously deals with allotting money and funds to people who need it.
Yeah, we were brought up in a family where you learn to respect, you learn to be tolerant of other people, and you always helped out other people. My father was kind of the manager of the track team, and there was about 60 kids in the program. A lot of them didn't have money, and although track was a cheap sport, I mean, hockey could be expensive, especially today with the gear, and when you're paying $300 for a stick.
Yeah.
Back then, the big price would have been your sneakers, and everyone had shorts and T-shirts, so you were pretty well equipped. But going on trips, my father would always take 2 or 3 with us, and I always wondered why we always had to share a motel room with other kids. But now you see the reason why.
Yes, yeah.
Those other kids didn't have the means, so rather than leave them home, my father, my mom, and dad would always take them. And so you were brought up in that environment where you helped other people and you volunteered and you participated and you did things. So I just learned from that and kind of followed up and kind of continued that. So community services was a really good fit as a career for me. But if you look, I have a Bachelor of Science in math. Doesn't quite fit the social science.
Yeah,
thing,
not at all.
But it actually does, because my thinking can be a little analytical. Although I had that social side of me that sees the good and sees value in people and how you can pull some of that stuff out. But the analytical science side gives you that definitive yes, no, it's good fit, bad fit, you know.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And so actually that's a perfect lead into our next question. What was kind of some of the background, like could you share some of your background that led you towards wanting to be in politics?
Sure. My father, because we were a single income family, actually had 2 jobs.
Okay.
He was the town building inspector, so he would leave some nights and have to go to town council meetings. I said, why would you go to a town council meeting? You're not a councillor, you're not a mayor, you know, what is it? Well, he said, I'm the building inspector, I have to do a report for council. I said, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And as a kid, you're always amazed, but he had 2 offices, right?
Right.
His daytime job and then the part-time building inspector. And he was kind of the first one the town ever hired that actually passed the credentials to be certified as a building inspector.
Okay.
Before it was like, hey,
This is a long time ago.
yeah, back in the 70s. So
Back
when that
in the
whole interval down by my house now was developed,
Right.
the town had to issue building permits, and so Dad was qualified, and he would do that. So that kind of intrigued me that, yeah, it's a nice little part-time gig. That'd be kind of cool, you know.
Yep.
And then when I started with community services, back then in 92, community services was run by municipalities. You always hear like the expression the county home.
Yes.
They were
Yep.
well, that was because the counties funded community services.
Right.
Or the word we don't like using is welfare. But
Yes.
that was the
yes.
old
Yes. Yes.
the old
That's what it was
homes.
called for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, welfare in itself is a good word.
It
essentially
is. Yeah, but it's like a lot of words, the
them
definitions
doing well,
change over
yes.
time.
Yeah.
So now it's kind of used as a derogatory,
Yes.
where
yes.
we don't like income assistance. Like we are assisting people. We're not trying to label you. Right? We talk about barriers to employment. Not that you're unemployed. You have barriers.
Yes,
If we
yep.
can overcome those barriers, you're employable. Things are great. Anyway, so from 92 to 98, each municipality, I would have to go to their county council meetings and present who was on income assistance, how
Oh,
much
really?
money we spent that much, how much money. We used to place people in nursing homes too, because if they were too long in the hospital, the municipalities would be charged for a day in the hospital
Oh,
if
wow.
we didn't place them in a nursing home.
Yeah,
So there was
so
always that
that's expensive.
pressure to get people placed and things. So in 98, that system kind of switched, and it was no longer run by municipalities. The province took over, and there was a municipal exchange. And so I kind of missed going to council meetings, so I knew all these councillors, and I'm talking to them, and they said, hey, why don't you run? So I gave it a shot in 2000. I was elected.
Incredible. So,
then-
you started your council work in 2000, and you were on the council for how many years? 20 years?
Well, it was broken up there. It is 20 in total.
Okay.
So from 2000 to 2016, I served the town of Antigonish 4 terms as councillor, serving
Right,
as deputy
yes.
mayor like 2 years and really stepping up but the council had changed a bit. So in 2016, I ran unsuccessfully for mayor. So then when you lose, you're off.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not like the warden where you only need 5 votes to get in.
Yeah,
You need
yeah.
1,000. So I was off council for 4 years. Then in 2020, I got the itch back and was kind of like, yeah, I'd like to do this again. Just you feel like it's unfinished business.
Yes. Yeah. Of course.
You want
of
to
course.
see some things. Like
Of course.
when I ran in 2016 for mayor, one of the programs I wanted was the heat pump program.
That's established now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or
but it's
in a
not
sense?
not the way that I had laid it out.
Okay. Okay.
So it took them about 3 years, but I think they did it wrong. But that's my personal view. People have bought into the program, find it successful, which is great. My idea was because we own the town electric utility, the more people we can get off fossil fuels and
Yes.
into our electricity, which we're almost 100% green, or we should be 100% green in about a year's time if things
And
follow
does that
through.
mean majority of the townspeople are on heat pumps and using things of that nature?
No, it's the energy we sell, the electricity, is green energy. Right now, we're about a little over 40% of all the energy that we create is green. It's
Yes.
from our turbine wind farm, right?
Solar panels, things
Yeah,
like
our
that.
solar garden's not operational yet, but we hope it to be. But it's only about 3 or 4% of our total power. We have another deal that council, we voted on to buy electricity instead of from Nova Scotia Power, buy it from Potentia, which is going to operate 100 turbine wind farm down the valley. So if we buy energy from them, we'll be 100% net zero,
Okay.
zero carbon. So when you turn on your lights, there's no fossil fuels creating that light.
Beautiful. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way the world seems to be going, right? Why is that important to be, net zero, of course? Because, of course, I think the idea is that certain occupations like coal and things like that would kind of be moved to the wayside a little bit. Why is it important to move in this new direction?
If you believe in climate change, and I do, I mean, climate change is not new.
No, it's not.
If you study
Science, yeah.
science at all, the Great Lakes were formed when the
Yeah.
glaciers were there. Well,
Yes.
we don't have glaciers in southern Ontario anymore.
No.
They receded, so the temperature has been getting warmer.
Mm-hmm.
But warmer temperatures are not always a positive thing.
Right, like we've noticed with our waste system.
Yeah. And so right now we're finding with climate change, we're getting the extreme weather events. So if you can imagine a bell curve,
Yes.
and the science people get this, because it has shifted, we're now at the higher peaks of those bell curves, and we're getting so that's why we're getting more rain events, like stronger rain, shorter periods of time, which is causing flooding and a lot of wind events.
Hurricanes, eh?
Yeah.
Lots of hurricanes.
Yeah. So with that in mind, if we can eliminate fossil fuels, now we're not going to get rid of fossil fuels in 10 years or 20 years even. If we look around this room, we have plastics, we have lubricants, we have oils, we have things, even your cell phone has a carbon footprint before it's produced. So, but if we can reduce those things, I think any little bit of change, why wouldn't you do that? You know, so if we can produce electricity greener, that may attract businesses that feel important about that, may relocate to Antigonish to do their business. And if we can produce electricity cheaper than Nova Scotia Power, then in turn we are providing a service to our residents at a lower cost.
Yes.
Which benefits. So you're always trying to look out for the little guy. If we can help them, great. Like housing is a big issue now.
Yes.
It's not a mandated council. You'll see the federal government struggling with it.
Yes.
Then they pass it on to the provincial government, which has a housing department. Municipalities are not tasked with that, but unfortunately it's being downloaded to us.
Right.
So we don't get in the building business, but we have to support affordable housing by having infrastructure, by having water, by having ample sewer capacity, so developers can produce that affordable housing, so that people can relocate here. And we got a great little town, but it's expensive to live here.
It is. And that's something I was going to ask you. What is the mayor's responsibility with making housing affordable? It's a federal thing overall, isn't it? So you're just trying to work with contractors to kind of, build something that would make sense for people, right?
Yeah, so what our role is to provide the infrastructure. So you're going to hear across from the junior and elementary school, affordable housing, Antigonish Affordable Housing is creating 17 more units, which they're not low-income housing, they're affordable housing.
What's the difference between affordable and low income?
That's a great question. So low-income housing is for people who are usually on fixed incomes and they don't make a lot of money.
Okay.
We have a safety net. Like I work for community service, so we have a safety net. So people should not be homeless. They should not be hungry. They should not be. But there's challenges with a lot of people that don't like rules or don't have the mental capacity,
of course,
or just are rebellious against the system. That the system is not designed to work for those people, no matter how much you try to tweak it.
Yep.
Right. So the difference, low-income housing is set so it's income tested. It's based on your level of income. And so we have people living in apartments in the housing authority that are paying $200 to $300 a month.
I mean, which is amazing, of course.
Yeah. Like you can't get a room.
Hard to find prices like that.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you should be able to, but yeah, that's why it's, to help people, of course.
Right. So social safety net is there for those people. The affordable housing is a little more. So they're targeting more of the middle class, the single parents, the single income wage earners who find it hard making ends meet. They're living paycheck by paycheck. So if something drastically happens to them, they're at risk.
It's hard.
Right. Yeah. So affordable housing gives people that break, gives people that if times get rough, their rent can be adjusted if their income gets adjusted.
Right. And then
Right.
it
So
would
there's
be
a safety net there.
based on that. If you, earn more, then it would incrementally increase, or
Right.
And so then people, is this like a segue kind of that you just want them to be able to build themselves up and then move on? Are there people waiting for those?
That's part of it. And the other part is some people may never be able to afford leaving affordable housing. But has your family size changed? It's like
Right.
when you're a single parent with children, your children will grow up and move away.
Yes, of course. Yes, your
Or,
requirements won't be the same.
yeah, or you may become a single person. Then you transition to a different unit. There's a lot of
Yes,
moving
yes. You don't
parts.
need two rooms,
Yeah.
or so to speak. Hmm.
So the affordable housing, the targets are a little higher. Like I think you can make up to 75,000
Oh, really?
and still qualify
Okay,
for
yeah.
affordable housing.
That's that's more than the average
Yeah.
for the average Canadian worker.
But if you're making 75,000, there's no way in Canada you'll be able to own your own home.
That's also true. So what does that say?
Well, and so you're always hearing things a living wage.
Hmm.
The science part of me says, okay, that line will always move
Yes, yes, it will.
because as the poverty line goes up, your living wage goes up.
Hmm.
That'll always escalate.
Absolutely. What's the poverty rate? 16,000.
I think it's like that for a single
Antigonish, I
person.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. As that goes up, it will change. But you're right. $75,000 even for a person, they can qualify for low income housing, but they can't most likely buy a home.
No. So that may give them an advantage where they can maybe save, get money down for a deposit, get a piece of
Absolutely.
land, but that mindset of when I grew up, get married, get a house, raise your family, and you're set for life.
Hmm.
That's not the mindset of the young next generation.
No, it doesn't seem to be. It's hard to say exactly what the mindset of the next generation is, but I think it has something to do with a lot of self reliance, individualism, uh, and maybe just exploration, curiosity. Uh, Maybe even partnerships are having a harder time in today's by today's standards or any standard really. Maybe relationships just are struggling underneath the 2024's umbrella.
Yeah, I think you're right. Um, I see that with my generation. There was a lot more divorces and separations with my classmates when I graduated high school than
Okay.
certainly with my parents' generation.
Right.
But nowadays, it's like
It's incredible.
it's-
Yeah.
it almost looks like it's that everything's disposable.
Yeah.
Relationships, you
Yep.
trade in your phone every 2 or 3 years, get
Yep.
a new model. Well,
Yep.
your lifestyle's like that too. And I'm not saying their lifestyle is wrong. Their work-life balance is more important
That's for
to
sure.
this
Yep.
newer generation
Mhm.
than mine. Like, you got a job, you stuck with it, you took the good with the bad, and usually a lot of bad, but things would work in that way. But is it right or wrong? It was just different.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with the way. I mean, in a sense, maybe the new generation, they're finding that middle area. Maybe life and work do deserve some kind of balance. But you were obviously brought up in a way and learned from your father and the people that you recognized that like hard work was the way to kind of get what you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any other mentors that taught you that, Sean, besides your father? Was there anyone like directly in politics that, during your council time that you learned from that really established, that ability to work hard and see your outcomes become realized?
No one really stands out,
Hmm.
but they were always present. Like, my father came from a family of 13.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was always surrounded with cousins. I had over 52 first cousins on
Okay,
my
yeah.
father's side,
Wow, incredible, eh?
3 on my mother's side.
Yeah.
So there was always you always had that network of support. And when I talked to my first cousins about this, I would, at their father's funeral or something like that, I said, your father was a great man. I remember he did this for me. And they would have a similar story.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my first cousin reminded me when he was on a hockey team, they always had to wear a shirt and tie.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
He never knew how to tie a tie. So as a result, he'd always come over to Dad's house, and Dad would tie a tie for him. And Dad said, "Come with me." Took him over to D.D. McDonald's clothing store, got him a shirt, tie, pair of pants. There, now you're all set. Tied the tie, got it set. Now you always have your outfit. Go.
Yes.
And he said, "I didn't pay for it. I assumed your father did." And I said, "Yeah." And likewise, my story is when I was younger, I was in grade 6, we were going to track and field provincials in Dartmouth. And back then, you bought a pair of sneakers in the summer, you used them all year, and then come September, they'd be wore out, and you'd go get another pair of sneakers for school. So Willie Wong owned the first sports store in town.
Okay.
So my uncle took me over. He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to track and field provincials." He looked at my sneakers. He said, "Where are your running shoes?" I said, "These are them." "Oh, come with me." Hopped in the car, drove over, got myself my very first pair of Adidas running shoes.
Okay.
Beautiful. I was so proud.
Yeah.
And I was walking out the door. I looked at my uncle and said, "My brother Paul's going to provincial too. And he has the same sneakers I have. So what size does he wear?" So
Really?
we came home with 2 pair.
Yep.
So when you're 10 or 11, 12 years old, getting your first pair of Adidas sneakers and going to provincials, I don't know if it made me run faster, but I did win, and it made me feel good. Just that boost of confidence that I have.
Now, that's beautiful because you can relate that to like having a dignified home, right? The new nice pair of shoes, just how it elevates you in your feeling, and the way that your attitude about things directly affects the way you have the outcomes in your life. And so having the nice shoes allowed you to feel good about yourself. A new pair of shoes, whether they're the best shoes in the world or not, you felt good about them. And you get a direct correlation from feeling good about yourself. And, I think that that's so important with home ownership, not to go too far into that direction, but to have somewhere that you find respect and it's dignified, you also probably do better out in the world.
Yeah, I agree with that. And since you talked about home ownership and the pride that goes with it, when I grew up in the 60s, our neighborhood, we had a lot of housing cooperatives, which like housing groups, we used to call them.
Right.
So you see like 5 houses identical on the outside. Inside, the layout would be exactly the same, but every family had their own, and they were able to purchase these and own them through CMHC. Our minister, Sean Fraser, had talked about the new program he has, that it's not really new, that they did it back after World War II.
Right.
So I would like to see the federal government invest in this type of project. If they could subsidize a group, say 10 people who want homes, buy a piece of land, the town could provide the infrastructure, the taxes would be as a collective instead of 10 individuals. We could make it work, but the way that partnership worked back then is that the homeowner had to put sweat equity into the home.
What does that mean?
Instead,
Labor?
they didn't have money
Yeah.
for equity, so they would have to help construct it.
They have to
So
perform the heavy labor.
off the 6 houses or 10 houses in the housing group, the men had to do the manual labor. Now,
Yeah. Okay. Fair
but
enough.
they could do that back then because it wasn't as stringent. The codes weren't as. Now you really
Right.
need
Yes. Everything has to be coded.
6, 7 months, 6, 7 weeks. You can build a house. Back then, it took 6 months. So the process was slower, but people could get in their own home and not be financially burdened and not have to save, your 10%, 25% down payment. You could have sweat equity as part of your collateral in the house. And back then, they were building houses for $20,000, building lots for $2,000, but they had
What year
25-year
was this
mortgages.
again?
They were in the 60s and 70s. You're familiar with Antigonish. The Heights was the
Yes.
very first housing group.
So
All those big
Here.
2-story houses.
did not
All
know
look
that.
The same. Yeah.
So these were the first homes built in that Antigonish area.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, a little bit of history. When the Trans-Canada Highway went through, where the number 7 intersection is now, that used to be housing for the black community. Because way back when, blacks were not allowed in the town of Antigonish, I was told.
Right, right. Even in 1985, I think the last segregated school was closed near Halifax.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that people, tend to forget these things. So, sorry, but go
That
on.
was in Dartmouth, and
Yeah,
community services would,
3 years before I was born.
yeah, and actually there was a house that was called the Home for Colored People. It was in Dartmouth, and it's still there today, but it's kind of a museum.
Right.
And so we, as community services, sometimes we'll take, when we're in Halifax for training, we'll take an afternoon and we toured that center.
Right.
It's in Dartmouth, and it was eye-opener because you're right, within my lifetime, this happened.
And not many people would be privy to it
No.
at all. I had to Google that. That's not something we learned in Canadian history.
No.
And it's Canadian history.
Yeah, and I can say history has been whitewashed because history was created and narrated by the victors.
Now, why do you think individuals would, what do they call it? This certain kind of narrative where they're talking about history, but it's supposed to be like a negative connotation. Forget the term that they use for, describing, like, I think like they don't want people talking about slavery in certain like classrooms or certain subjects. I forget exactly what the term is for that, for not wanting those conversations to be had, but there is kind of, and maybe it's to alleviate the pain that people feel from hearing these stories. But from what I understand, I've been hearing that more schools are approaching these subjects in a way that they don't describe them, so that they don't have conflict amongst students as much.
That could be it, because there's probably, I've been in the school system way longer than I was ever in it, right? So I can't tell you what the present situation is, but when we went to school, there was very few people of color.
Right.
There was
right.
very few, if any, disability present in the school. And now they're all mainstreamed and they're all part of it,
Yes.
Like they're integrated at an early age, so it's not as foreign to them. So I think when you're exposed to it early, you lose that lens. You don't see the barriers that
Right.
our generation created.
Yes. Now,
Right.
do you feel like, as we're in 2024, do these things, are they still relevant? Should we be discussing slavery in your mind? Things like the Holocaust, tragedies that affect, and I mean, again, everyone. I think every creed and every type of people have actually been slaves at one point or faced some kind of tyranny in that way. But it's funny that these things aren't being taught in school.
Like I said, the history is usually written by the victors.
Yeah.
So we're Camerons, so we came from the Highlands of Scotland, and they were poor, starving, uneducated people compared to today. In fact, the ship Hector came to Nova Scotia in 1773.
Right.
Our family, the Camerons, there was 4 brothers that came over, and they were in 1778. We have a book that talks about genealogy, but we were kicked off the land by English lords because it was cheaper to have sheep
Exactly.
than to have humans
Exactly.
inhabit the land. So they were shipped over here, and our ancestors, basically what they could carry on their back is what they come over, jam-pack into a little boat. If you ever saw the ship Hector and think that, you could put 400 to 700 people in that boat, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's crazy.
For a 7 or 8 week journey. So if you survived the journey, came over here, you were granted a piece of land. And all you had was an axe, all you had was some seed on your back, and a lot of them didn't make it, right?
Yeah.
So we don't hear about that part. We talk about how they developed and opened the land
Yes.
and
Yes.
things like that.
Yes.
But you're right. Slavery was not just in the British colonies, prior to the U.S. Revolution. It was everywhere. In fact,
Brazil.
there's still slavery probably today. They
Good
just it
portion
takes a
of
different.
people went to Brazil during the slave trade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you look at the pyramids.
Oh yeah,
They weren't created by
absolutely.
workers,
Yes.
unionized, and
Yeah, they definitely weren't unionized.
No.
And again, yes, of course, each race, nationality has their differences with their tragedies. People came here, and some had land waiting for them. Some, just were escaping. But all in all, whether you pick at the details, we've all have a history.
Yes.
We all have a history. And I think that like one of the things that like helps unite people is like, the idea of a higher power, right? And so Sean, just to this next question, and I know some people don't always feel comfortable answering this question, but are you religious?
Yes, I am.
May I ask which
Sure.
religion you follow?
We were brought up in the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, when I was a kid, I would say 75% of the residents in Antigonish were Roman Catholic.
Definitely was Catholic for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's where it got its nickname, the Little Vatican.
Yeah, built on that.
Yeah, well, if you think about Antigonish in the 60s, okay, the newspaper, the Casket where my father worked, was owned primarily by the Catholic Church. So the radio station was founded by Reverend Clark, who taught at St. X. And, the board of directors were a lot of priests.
Right.
The university was created by the Roman Catholic Church to give higher education, to educate men and women into priests and to sisters. So the Sisters of St. Martha's were formed. World headquarters is right in Antigonish.
So the initial idea
formed,
was to get them into nunhood and priesthood.
Yeah, because back then the old saying was one member of every family should be a priest or a nun.
Okay. Yes.
But back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the only educated people were priests.
People who are in the convents and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that all comes back from monks and things, right? Like the university started with monks and things.
Exactly, because that was a lot of people were illiterate.
Of course, yeah.
So the priests were the educated people in the community. So when you look, they had a Catholic school board, Catholic school. Higher education was by the Catholic. The media, the radio, and the newspaper was owned by that. And they created the hospital. So the first St. Martha's Hospital that was actually built by the province was in 1980. So before that was run by the Catholic nuns, the St. Martha's.
Unbelievable.
So we had the church, the education, everything was controlled by the church. So that's the nickname, the Little Vatican.
Unbelievable. So
even sports, like teachers would tell you, Sunday morning, very little sports went on because everyone had to go to church. So
Sunday
no matter what your denomination, Sunday morning was was sacred. You had to go to church.
So you put on your good clothes.
That's right.
You stopped what you were doing and you went to church for an hour.
Yes.
And so why was that important? Obviously, religion seemed kind of like the backbone at that time.
Oh, it certainly was. It was the backbone of Antigonish. But the Antigonish I grew up in the 60s and 70s is not the Antigonish of today. We have multicultural people here. We embrace diversity. We embrace change. We, to see black, brown, yellow skinned people is not unusual.
And a lot, I mean, of course, with a lot of immigration that's been going on over the last few years especially, but you're right, like there is quite the demographic now in Antigonish. more of a melting pot now. More than ever, we have a mosque on
Yeah,
Main
right
Street.
on Main Street.
You know, which is unbelievable. I never thought I'd see the day where and I hadn't even known it was there for a long time. We drove by a while ago, and I said, "There's a mosque in Antigonish,"
Yeah,
and my girlfriend said, "Yes, there is, Janaya. There's
yeah.
been one for quite a little while now."
There's a
But
Hindu temple out in
yeah,
Mel's Cove.
right, right, and we have, of course, Jehovah's Witness, and we have
Hmm.
Catholic Church, and we have the United
Church of
down there
England.
as well.
Yeah.
We're becoming, uh, very versatile. The town's looking a lot different. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's good because when we grew up, everyone was the same.
Yeah.
Majority were white, majority were Catholic, majority were income families, and so everyone was kind of poor together.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
If not poor, like we always had food, but you had your good clothes, and then you had your bad clothes. When you came home from school, you had to get out of your good clothes to
clothes.
save them,
Yes.
and then you rough and tumble in your old clothes, right? It's just the way things were. Even to go on hockey trips, when I think back now, we were never put up in hotels like they are now. We were billeted, which means
Right,
if we
yes.
played Sydney, the Sydney team would bring the players into their homes. Likewise,
yes,
we would
yes.
bring them into our home.
Mm-hmm.
You'd feed them, you'd shelter them, and then play against them. It was kind of neat. So it opened up. The world became smaller because we were able to travel more. It's like when you're a kid, you're stuck to your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then you get a bike. Whoa, now I
Yeah.
can explore outside my neighborhood. And then you get a driver's license, you can explore it a little more.
I think these new people who do come to the area are only like enriching it. Really, they're only enriching the culture, of Nova Scotia, and I think that in a way we're just adding to it. I don't think that it's taking away from anything at all. I know that we did have a small situation with the mosque. I think there was a little bit of vandalism that went on. Would you care to, talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like any type of hate crime. I certainly don't condone like keyboard warriors on social
Right,
media.
right.
They get behind a keyboard and they think it's fair game to say anything
Because mostly people would never have the courage to do these things,
to your face.
to your face. No, and
No.
not at all.
No, and unfortunately, in my world, with politics, you get that talk behind your back. I mean, sometimes you kind of expect it. Like
Of course, yeah.
you make a decision, you're not going to make everyone happy. So
That's something you have
I'm
to kind
okay
of
with
live
that.
with.
Yeah. And in my job with community services, I had to say no a few times, and it's not always easy, but it had to be done.
Right.
Right. So as a result of that, I became respectful of people who had a vent,
Right. Yes, yeah.
but there was
filter.
always a line where don't cross that line, or else you're being more than disrespectful. You're being like a challenging behavior that
And why do you feel like you can do something like that?
Yeah.
Like we're all trying to be civil.
yeah, and so by having different cultures, they're not new cultures don't attack your old cultures. New cultures, you can embrace how they became Anticonishers, how they
Yes.
moved to our area, how they're being perceived and protected, and how they're growing.
Right.
But it's a two-way street. Like when I was a kid, there was always a welcome wagon. When there's a new family in the neighborhood would kind of gather and kind of like support them and send gifts over and welcome them and invite their children, if they had any, into our homes and into our play groups and stuff. And I remember in school, when there was a new kid in school, a teacher would assign myself or one of my classmates, hey, you're going to watch this guy, you're
Right.
going to introduce him to your social set of friends and, be friends to them. And then by the end of the week, they were no different than anyone else in the school. Things are a little different now. Like people move in neighborhoods and they're very private, more so than,
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's just sometimes people from away when your children are involved, then you get involved with your children, and
Right. Yeah.
you make those connections.
Hmm.
Like there's some connections that you and I have
Yeah.
through basketball, Ronnie JJ,
Oh,
and
hell
things
yeah.
like that
Yep.
we can connect on. Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a good
Absolutely.
guy, this bad guy, whatever.
Hmm.
And you have to open up those doors, and you have to be willing to give of yourself so that you can welcome others, so they feel valued and welcome and accepted in the community.
Hmm.
It's not a hard concept to get over. It's quite easy. So, I mean, there's a lot of people who, you know, where I work community services, I always say you don't have to import poverty. We have some here,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
like to support
Yep.
our locals as much as I can, and that's not just with people on income assistance. It's also people who are challenged in other ways. You know, we see people up and down Main Street
Yeah. Oh yeah.
that could use,
Some support.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Not so much a handout, but a hand up. You know, let's
Absolutely.
You know,
That's
we
one-
always had characters in town. Even when I grew up, we had, my dad would always say, there's a character. There's always a joke or
Yes,
two
there is.
associated with it. But people in Antigonish used to watch out for those characters. So if something bad should happen to them, somebody was watching and caring, and
This sense of empathy.
yeah. They'd be supportive too, like if someone needed a bike or someone needed an extra meal.
Mhm.
Like, if you go to Tim Hortons, you'd be surprised how many gift cards are behind the counter for individuals. If they should come in, here's a card,
Yeah.
pay for their meal.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things are done that are kind of under the table.
Okay.
You know, just the town always looked after their own.
And I know you mentioned that during the debate that there was also the sense about how we, welcome students. Like you went to the university, of course. Has the opinion? I know there was a sentiment even when I was growing up that townspeople kind of referred to college students as like soupies, and there'd be things vice versa. But do you think that perhaps that the more welcoming sense is more part of our identity in Antigonish now, welcoming students rather than, I know even recently there was I think of something about a weapon was, someone challenged students or threatened students on campus with a weapon. There was an article about that. But I'm just wondering, do you feel like people get along more with students now than they have in the past?
I would have to say yes, because there's way more of them.
Yeah, definitely way more.
No, I mean, when I was a student, started St. FX in '79.
Mm-hmm.
You could work for the summer and save enough money if you lived at home and ate at home to pay your tuition,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now people are coming out. It's cost them $20,000 a year almost to attend St. FX if
It's
you
very
lived on
expensive,
campus.
right?
It was, yeah. So they come out laden with debt. But there's way more. Like the student population when I was at St. FX, the freshman class was the largest, but half of them disappeared.
Okay.
And then by the second and third, by your fourth year, they only graduated maybe 500,
Right.
right? So student population was about 2,000 to 2,500 students. Now it's up over 4,500. Off those students, you have a lot of internationals. You have people that live here. So St. FX only houses 2,000 on campus. So the other 2,000 to 2,500
Off campus.
have to live in town or just off town, or they commute. So that's why you're seeing more cars. And it does put some type of burden on the town. But at the same time, those students inject the life. Like,
Oh yeah.
we grew up in Antigonish, just as I'm sure, like high school basketball wasn't great because on Friday night and Saturday night you went to St. FX
Yeah.
to see the best
Yeah.
play, right?
Yep.
Hockey was the same way. Basketball, football. We were never exposed to football.
Yeah.
We saw on TV unless we were here. So we were lucky. And a lot of towns would are very envious of Antigonish because of the university.
Yes, small town, good sized university,
Yeah.
not a normal, tandem.
No, but it works. So when I was at university, as you mentioned, the St. FX students were called soupies. That was an old expression back from the 40s and 50s, even when Brian Mulroney was here.
Is that because students afford soup?
Yeah, they were supposedly poor, and they could, when they moved off campus to eat, they'd have soup.
From a can.
Soup hounds,
Okay.
soupies. But likewise, when we went there, we were townies. They'd
Yes,
always
yes,
ask, "What
yes.
residence are you in?" "Oh, I'm from town." "Oh, you're a townie." So again, I took that as a negative connotation. I said, you know what? I don't think that's what they mean.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Just
like
a literal reference. Yeah, that's
yeah.
all.
So people will say they're from Cape Breton. We call them Cape Bretons or Newfoundlanders, Newfies.
Mm-hmm.
It can be derogatory, but make it a positive. So that's what we try to do. So I'd always integrate, because I used to see my older siblings, like off the 9 children, 8 of us went to St. FX. I mean, that's why our parents relocated to Antigonish, to give us that opportunity for second and higher education, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would always take, Sunday night was like a big dinner in our house, turkey, roast beef, or a big ham dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd always take my St. FX friends, who at the end of the week could be at a meal card punches, right?
Yes, yeah.
And they're hungry.
Yeah, of
They'd
course.
only have
Starving.
they'd only have 10 or 14 meals.
Only eating soup, I mean.
Yeah. So I would always take them home. They'd have a home cooked meal, and
Yeah.
once in a while you would get a thank you from their parents, like in the form of a card.
Mm-hmm.
You know, thank you for being so nice to our son or daughter, making them feel at home. We feel that you're giving them a safe environment. The town is safe. We feel assured that our son or daughter is getting not only good quality education, but a good quality of life for the 4 years they're here.
That
Because
makes you feel good as
Yeah.
well in turn.
yeah,
Of course. Being there for people, excuse me, is very important, and it all comes from a certain kind of attitude, right? Attitude lends the events we experience the significance they possess. And so and again, you're a living example of that, because it's not always easy to offer your neighbor a helping hand, or to offer them, even just, here I am, like, nice to meet you, offer them some cookies, to do anything. I found, like, maybe since COVID, people have gotten a little bit, to become homebodies. Like, they're not keeping distance in lines. It's almost like we still have our 6 feet apart kind of thing in life. It feels like people have almost adopted that into their attitude. Do you feel like COVID had a big effect on the way people maybe congregate with each other?
I think 100%, but I think more important to that discussion, and it'd be interesting to see if any psychological or psychology profs do a study of how, was it COVID or was it the connectivity people have to their devices? When my boys were younger, we'd transport them for sports events, and you'd hear the chatter in the back seat, and then cell phones come out, then they'd be texting to each other in the back seat.
Okay, next
so the
level,
conversation kind of
people didn't talk as much.
When I was a kid and you were punished, you were sent to your room.
Mm-hmm.
That was a punishment. Nowadays,
Your
kids, the children live in their room, because their room is their little sanctuary. They have their computer. Just to give you a good little talk about this, and you can relate to this. After a basketball game, we came home. My son was missing his shorts. And I said, "Where are your gym shorts? Your uniform?
Yeah.
We got to wash them." "I don't know." I said, "Well, find out. Like,
Yeah.
Did we leave them in the dressing room?" Because I remember I was selected as coach for basketball, not knowing anything about basketball. Quickly learned I was in over my head. So I got 2 St. FX students to volunteer. to coach. So I was kind of the manager. So they didn't have a car. They didn't. So we would transport them with the team and, kind of support them as well. But the funny story, getting back to my story, I told my son, I said, well, I want you to phone your teammates and find those shorts because you don't own them. And
Right,
I'll
yeah.
have to buy a set, if we lost part of the uniform. So about 2 hours later, now I'm sitting in the kitchen watching the phone. I'm thinking, he didn't call me. What's wrong with this? I
Yeah.
asked him to do something, and I was getting upset.
Of course, yeah.
And I said, Keith, did you find your shorts? No, I think my friend Stuart has them. Assuming you think Stuart has them. Did Stuart sit beside you? Did Stuart do this? No. I said, well, how do you know that? Well, I contacted the other people, and they said, I said, what, you didn't contact anyone. I've been watching
Process
the
of
phone. And he goes,
elimination.
Dad, no one uses the phone. That's old school. I went on my computer and did Messenger, and we think we're just waiting for Stu to come back from. He went out someplace, the parents, and all of a sudden, bing, you get a message. Yeah, Stu has them. He has 2 pair of shorts. His mom's going to wash them, drop them off practice the next day. I was like, oh. So here I was getting mad because my form of communication was the telephone,
Right, yes.
right? Nothing. Even like when we grew up, TV was huge. I can still remember the first color TV coming in, and we had 2 channels.
60s, right?
We had 2 TV channels, French or English. And then we get ATV. It's like, oh, we have CBC, French and English, and now we have ATV. That was kind of cool.
Yes, when they had cable network news.
Yeah, and then
That was
cable came. I was
huge.
on, whoa. We had
Huge.
like 20 channels. Now TV is not important to this generation. They live stream everything.
Yeah, it's all on your phone,
So
if you even
it's-
need it.
So that's what I'm saying. People are becoming isolated because of technology and because of the way they do things. It's not wrong. It's just different than the way I do it.
So
I'll
not
still
so
pick up
much
the
COVID,
phone.
but
No.
really the technological, like over time, technology just kind of invading our space, our personal space.
So my parents grew up. They used to visit people, and then the telephone,
Which was
came
normal.
over. Yeah.
When I was young, I used to knock on people's doorbells,
Yeah.
doors, ring the doorbell. Is so and so home? That's how you communicated.
Yeah. And when we came home from school, if you had any homework, you'd try to get it done as quick as you can, change
you
out
could
your
get out.
good clothes to go meet
Yeah.
and play with all the neighbors. And at supper time, you'd always hear 1 or 2 mothers yell, "Supper!" Okay, next goal wins, next
Yeah,
point
yeah,
wins,
yeah.
like one more game or whatever, and then you'd bail home. That doesn't happen now because people can talk and they can play games in the comfort of their own bedroom,
Yeah. Yep.
live stream with other people.
Yep.
So it's just different. So I don't know if COVID is a major factor, but it's certainly, because of COVID, technology has developed even further so people can be isolated, but still be connected in different ways.
This kind of sense of feeling connected, but more distant than
Yeah.
ever. Yeah, I feel like that's true. I feel like every person that I interact with, especially during, let's say, paint a picture for you. People are sitting at dinner. What happens as soon as the conversation stops? Everybody's turned to their phone and so distracted. It just seems weird that people aren't finding time to really, engage with each other, making time. But I think the more that we talk about it, that people are starting to realize like the effects, whether it's being too close proximity to your phone, whether it's like a radiation or, just constantly thinking about what you're going to do next on the phone. A lot of times people pick up their phone and don't know why. Can you, literally just to scroll. And I think that getting out more, trying to build connections with people is definitely a better way to utilize your time, I think. And I think that it's taking away from the relationships when we aren't actually paying attention to one another.
You're painting yourself as older than what you were.
I think so.
I'm
I
looking at
think
this.
so. I mean, but me and my girlfriend talk about this stuff a lot. And yeah, maybe my ideas are a little bit antiquated in that sense. But I do believe that as I go forward, I'd like to reduce my cell phone time as much as possible. It just feels like an innate feeling. It's visceral. Not sure why, but maybe it's the fear of what will become between even your personal relationships. It gets difficult when you just find you're relying on your phone too often. So, anyways, enough about that stuff, Sean. We have some questions
Sure.
from some folks that are actually wondering about some of the things that you might be doing in the next coming bit in Antigonish. So let's just go with this question here. One woman actually wrote in, she said, what would be the top priorities for the town within your first year?
Yeah, I talked about this throughout my campaign. The town's role is to provide the infrastructure. Yeah, it's not sexy. It's pretty boring. Water, sewer. But let's think about that for a second. We talked about affordable housing. How can you build more houses if you have no water to connect to it? How can you build more houses when there's no sewer plant to accept the refuge?
Right.
So that's our role. And if we don't provide that, I would give us a failing grade. So water is not just for consumption. We all need it, right? So if the town of Antigonish has the water infrastructure and the sewer infrastructure to support their town citizens, which is a little over 4,000.
Yes.
And when the St. X students come, maybe about 8,000 people. We have enough resource to provide that. But we granted water and sewer to our neighbors, the county.
Yes, yes.
So they in turn created their own utility. So we now wholesale it to them. They retail it back to their residents, and they've continued that distribution system to the point where county residents consume 21% more water than town residents.
Just because of the back and forth.
Well, they've connected the pipes. We allowed them to connect neighborhoods, but then they ran those pipes down the road.
Right, yep.
So now there's more county users than town users. So when we run into water shortages, I can't water my lawn, wash my car. I have to limit my, water consumption. We can't enforce that in the county. So there's a question of fairness and equity. Is that fair? The farmer that's hooked onto the town water still has to water his cows.
Yes, yes.
So he's not under restrictions, but I am. The owner of the car wash in town gets shut down. He loses business that he can never recoup. That money's now gone. He drives home to where he lives in the county,
Right.
and they have sprinklers going on the lawns with the town water. Why is that fair?
Right.
So these are kind of the issues. And when I talk about water, not just consumption to drink, water for fire protection. If there's no water in the fire hydrant, are you really providing protection
Right, right.
to people?
I think you mentioned this during the debate that we don't have
Absolutely.
the resources there if anything were to happen.
Yeah, because-
forest fires, for example.
Yeah, and we see devastating forest fires.
Yes,
Like
yes.
Fort Mac wiped out and increased everyone's insurance Canada-wide.
And it's not impossible that something like
Halifax.
that would happen around
No,
here. Right, because
no.
even a year or two ago in Halifax.
That's right.
Yep.
And my niece was one of those ones. She thought her house was gone, but her house was saved. So what they can attribute that the water bomber flew over, hammered their house just as the flames were coming through. So their house was saved. It did sustain damage because of the smoke and stuff like that.
Right,
but
yes.
They were able to, but they didn't lose their possessions like other people. And you'll find out you can rebuild a house. You can't rebuild those pictures. You can't rebuild those
Yeah,
memories. You can't
sentimental
rebuild.
things.
Yeah. So we have to be cognizant of that. Are we doing a service? Like our job is to provide a service so people can do these things. I think we're doing a disservice if we continue to allow more people to hook on without solving that basic problem of a new water source.
Right.
Solving, like we've already doubled the size of the water dam. It can't get any bigger, right? So we're limited.
So what are we to do then? Is that
You
a
need
part
another
of
water
that?
source.
Another water source. Okay.
Yeah,
And so, what does that process look like? Is that something that's feasible? Within.
absolutely, it's feasible, and we have some ideas on where to go on it. So we have to first get like sworn in office.
Mhm.
We have to meet with our county neighbors and work together to say, okay, here's the issue. Bang, let's solve it. So the town residents have bought and paid for water treatment plants, bought and paid for the water distribution system, the dam, the refurbished dam, bought and paid for the sewer plant, and bought and paid in 2000 for the doubling of the size of the sewer plant so it can produce more. But
Right.
if you smell the summer this year, you know it's not working well.
Yes, and that was actually a question I wanted to segue into as well. So the waste management system, if you've been in Antigonish over the summer, it's not as bad as it once was. I don't know if that's because of like the cooler air, or whatever it might be, or it just fluctuates, whether there's more water rushing in, things like that. But the narrative was that the issue with the waste system, as far as what I had read online, was that we had an influx of people, so that meant more water rushing to the system. We also had more toiletry items being flushed down, and the heat. Now, those don't seem to be issues with the waste management system itself. That seems to be things that maybe the system couldn't control. What responsibility does like Antigonish's council and mayor have to get those things accomplished and to reduce the smell? Because it can't just be heat, toiletry items, and then more students or people immigrating to the town.
Yeah, you touched on a lot there, so I'll give you the quick and dirty as I know it. The sewer treatment plant is a 40 million gallon open reservoir, broken up into three segments, or three lagoons. It's only 14 feet deep.
Okay,
So it's
yeah,
those
yeah.
inorganic materials, like those flushable wipes, they call
Yes,
them.
yes, yeah.
They're not biodegradable. The only thing that really our sewer plant can handle is toilet paper and human waste. That's what it's designed to treat. Everything else doesn't break down.
Right.
And so when you have these inorganic materials entering, they settle to the bottom. And then you lose that 14 feet of area that treatment can happen. And if you get 4 feet, now you're down to 10.
Sure. Yep.
So,
And that's kind of what's been happening then. This
Yeah.
has been building up, and it doesn't allow as much water to come into it.
right, and it's not so much the water. We diverted some water off thinking that would help it, but I think in hindsight, and I'm not an engineer, so I can't speak scientifically on this, but we're getting a stronger concentration of sewage in the plant, so it's thicker. The viscosity
yep.
is more solids type thing. The aeration has to work harder, and because we lost so much capacity on the bottom,
Right.
that the plant has to work a lot harder to try to break down. So we throw bacteria bugs into the system, and they work quite well, and they break out the feces, right?
Right.
And they create heat when it works, and then it dies off and floats to the top, and you got to skim that stuff off.
Right.
But during the process, it emanates the smell. So there's an anaerobic and aerobic portion. One uses oxygen, one can't. But the bugs work at different levels. So when the lagoon gets shallow, you miss those three layers, and they're kind of overlapping. And the ones in the bottom that can find oxygen in the organic material, when it releases, it has a gas, like a methane
Yes, of
gas,
course.
and releases a smell. So as it's closer to the surface, you get that smell more often.
Yeah.
So we started a process of desludging. We had an engineering study that said we need more water, more oxygen being pumped into the lagoon, so these bugs can work with the oxygen. So they're getting clogged up.
Okay. Yeah.
They're
of course,
getting So we're going to invest $5 million, but I don't know if that's going to be a Band-Aid or if that is going to be a solution long term. I think, thank you, I think this will be a Band-Aid and it'll prolong the life of the plant. But the plant's over 50 years old. The technology was late 60s, early 70s. There's new technologies out there that are like half the size and double the capacity. I think we got to start looking at that. But that's for, I'm not saying the next council, that's for this council to start that work now, because it's going to take years to get it. Like, who wants a sewer plant in their backyard?
We shouldn't expect any kind of quick fix.
No, we should anticipate, we should be able to fix the smell. So
Okay.
there's a bunch of
So
factors
the
in
smell
there.
won't
The
be a
depth of the
factor.
water is one. The temperature of the water is one. The amount of affluent being pumped into it. And that changes when the students arrive and when the students leave.
That's what I was getting by
Yeah.
the
So-
things online. Yes, more people come in, there's a boost, and then they leave, and it.
So you throw more
manages
bugs
itself.
in to try to combat the expected increase. And so when you're talking like 4,500 students, you still have support staff that work there as well.
Yeah, of
And
course.
they're
Yep.
flushing,
Yep.
right? So that number could probably be about 6,000 any given day, in addition to the town residents and the county residents.
And so the system wasn't set up to handle
No.
that kind of.
No, it was originally built for about 7,000. Right now, we're probably over 14 to 15,000 users. Right, so we did do some work on it, and we're going to spend $5 million this year. In fact, the contract for desludging is going to be awarded this week or next week. So we as council heard the complaints, acted on it, and ordered staff to start the desludging sooner. Like, it's ahead of the schedule that the engineering department said we need. But we don't know it, but your nose would tell you that it's not working.
Yes, and so I have a question. When the town says, that the levels are safe, like to smell this sewage, it's safe, but it's not a health, like any kind of health risk. But if a smell makes you hypothetically sick to your stomach, that in a sense is some kind of a health risk, wouldn't you say?
Well, yes and no. I can't say with proof that the smell is harmful, because we have monitors and sensors throughout that plant, because we have manpower working in the plant. Like, if
But
you
my
think,
point is just that, like, I know people who just work in town who have said on Facebook or things like that, just that they, have been sick.
Yeah.
They assume it's related to the smell that particular day, that they, had quite a pungent smell, and they became sick. But I know that the town had described, the levels as being, having no effect towards your health. But if something makes you regurgitate, then one would assume simply that it has some effect.
the quick, easy solution is not everyone is cut out to be a plumber.
I'm not, that's for
Right.
sure. Yeah.
Not everyone is cut out to change babies' bottoms,
Yeah.
right? I know that if I smell vomit from somebody else, you better watch out, because I could be next. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just has that effect on me. So I don't dispute that people are getting sick by the smell.
Of course.
But to say that there's correlation between them getting sick and it being harmful, I don't know if we can draw that connection. And I'm not trying to say that to protect the town, but because we have workers right in the plant, and I don't think they've missed too many days, but we have sensors and we have monitoring devices, because through OH&S, you cannot subject workers into a harmful relationship.
Right. Yes.
So like I said, not everyone's cut out to be a plumber. but I'm glad we have plumbers.
Absolutely. Of course. Of
Right?
course. Yes.
So if you're not used to a smell and you smell it, it's not pleasant.
Of course.
Farmers, I can walk into a farmer's house and I can tell you, hey, you live on a farm, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Going
yes.
to school, you knew the kids that grew up on a farm because if you sat
Nose
too close,
blindness,
they
yeah.
might have been in the barn before they had to come to school.
Of course. Yeah.
And they become kind of nose blind to it, but we detected that smell. So again, people's sensitivities, more people are sensitive now to smells because there's not as many smells around. A lot of people work in scent-free environments. So when there is a new smell, and I'm not saying this is a nice smell. It wasn't. I
not
could
at all.
smell it.
Yeah.
And as I described it before, it would get in your mouth. And you're
Yes, you
like,
could taste it.
You could taste it. You know, and so I can't imagine trying to eat food down at one of those fast food places in close proximity
Even
to
at
the sewer
St.
treatment
X,
plant.
you could smell for a while, Sean.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, it's a work in progress. I heard a number somewhere around like even $50 million to, complete this kind of project and then
Yeah.
move it. And
It's funny, when I started my campaign, one of my old college classmates, Tom's his name, he went on to become an engineer, and he did some sewer projects, and he said to do a sewer treatment plant to service about 25,000 people, because you don't build it for now, you build it for
Yeah,
the
for the
future.
future,
You want to have at
posterity.
least twice the capacity as what you have now. So 25 to 30,000 people, his ballpark was about 50 million. So that number now resonates with everyone. I keep hearing that 50 million coming back.
So
And
because
actually,
it's a big number.
yeah,
everyone
and
was like,
actually
"Whoa."
during the debate, my opponent stated the number 50 million. I kind of looked and I said, oh, yeah, my number's going around. So
Yeah.
people are believing that to be true. I don't know if that's the actual number, but that was his estimate.
Okay, so it still
And-
remains to be seen, and it's funny, yes, how information passes so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of neat that way. I mean, do I believe it'll be 50 million or more? Yeah. Because everything, when you deal with infrastructure money, once you deal with the government level, you can sure the prices go up. Because there's not that many people build sewer treatment plants.
Now, is a big piece is relocation too, right? Because where our treatment center is right now, our treatment plant, it's right by our Heritage Museum.
Right next door.
Right by the hospital. It's close. It's right downtown, basically.
Well,
so
you got to remember when it was built by the town, and that was the edge of town. There was no Mount Cameron. There was the hospital up there, and then there was a few houses down the harbor, and then you hit farms.
It seems like Main Street Extension right now.
Well, exactly.
More or
So,
less.
yeah, if you're new to town, you would see the urban center, and you would assume all the urban is town. But I could show you on a map where the line is, and you would be, what? Really? That's not town? Like, really? So, do you remember where the old Katy Lines bus stop was? Right on the end of James Street. You know where the Tim Hortons was?
Yes, yes.
The building next to it?
Yes, I remember that.
That building was
That's-
county.
So that's considered the county.
It is
right?
county. It's not considered. It is.
So anything past there to Post Road's all county.
All county, yeah. When you come down the Highland Drive, you hit the three-way stop, and you proceed
Yes.
up to the schools, turn left to Greening Drive.
Yeah.
That three-story apartment building on the right, that's county.
Because even like Briley Brook would that be considered county as well if you go up Hawthorne Street? Where does that end?
One side of it.
One side of it.
So those new houses on the left,
Yeah.
where they're close together, that bundle, they're town, and then their
Okay.
backyards
Or county.
would be county, and across the street would be county.
How many people live in Antigonish County? Is it more than 10,000?
There's about 15,000.
About 15,000. So town and county is about 20,000 people.
Towns
Now,
close to 5.
there was a lot of discussion about bringing together the councils from the district and the removing either the council from the town and combining those and
Right.
becoming one thing. What's the discussion about Sean? Because I'm not exactly clear what
Right.
all the fuss is about.
I'm glad you brought that up, because people always associate me as being anti-amalgamation.
Right.
I'm not. amalgamation, I voted to explore it. Well, they called it consolidation back then.
Yes.
I voted to explore it. And both councils unanimously voted to explore it.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout the process, I felt they weren't giving us all the information.
Okay, fair enough.
So, that inquisitive, analytical thinking of mine, I researched. They gave me Queen's Regional Municipality to look at what a wonderful example that was. Well, that model was a little different. The town of Liverpool was dying. They had growth on the outside. So when I went to school, you started with a village, grew into a town, and grows into a city.
Right.
That can never happen in Nova Scotia because the province will not allow a town to grow because the county surrounds it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when we looked at possibility of a regional government. That's a good thing. But what they proposed at the 11th hour was just to dissolve the town and follow underneath the county of Antigonish, a municipality. So as a result of that, nothing really happened. And they did that because when I checked with Windsor West Hants, I'm on the RCMP advisory board. I asked the question, and I found out that because their population went over 15,000, and you can Google this pretty quick.
Right.
Your RCMP contracts, when your population's over 15, you pay 90% of the bill. If your population's under 15, you pay 70% of the bill.
Okay.
So where the county's hovering around 15,000, if your population varies like 1 or 2%, they're going to allow you to continue under the old contract. If you all of a sudden add 25% more citizens, you're going to get hit with that, and that would cost the town and county $1 million more.
Okay.
So
Wow.
my sense is, look at the condition of our streets. If we have an extra $1 million to pay for the exact same level of RCMP we have now, why would we do that? Why don't we wait until that becomes a reality in 2032 and use that extra $1 million and let's fix our streets?
Yes. Yes.
Right? That's $8 million we're going to turn away. I don't like paying more for the same of anything.
Of course not. No, man. No.
If a gallon of milk's $5, I want to pay $5.
You
I don't
the
want to pay
reasonable
10.
price. Yeah.
Right? It's the same milk.
Yes.
Right? So that was one reason I was against it. So they changed it from and we talked about a sewer treatment plant, $50 million. When you're a regional government or even a town, you get better cost sharing through our Municipal Grants Act
Right.
with the province.
Yep.
So would you rather have 50% paid for by government, or would you rather have 72% paid for by government when you're having a $50 million bill?
Yeah.
So that was reason number 2. So I had all these little reasons. And plus, the big thing, I felt they didn't give us information on the tax rate. They didn't give us information on boundaries. They didn't give us information on not so much representation, but how the new council would be formed. Would it be urban? Would it be rural?
Right.
They kept saying they're going to eliminate the fight between town and county. Well, I don't see that as a fight. There has to be cooperation. But I saw it, all you're doing is moving the boundary to urban and rural. So the people who live out in Cape George, Harville-Bushy, Arisag, their level of service from the municipality is very low. They get garbage removal and whatever recreation programs they might be available to get. Whereas we live in town, or even on the fringe, we have sidewalks, we have curb and gutter, we have street lights. We have way more level of service, water, sewer.
Yes. Yeah.
But we should pay more than that. So why is it fair for someone who lives in Cape George on their own well, their own septic, and gets garbage pickup to pay 86 cents per $100 of assessment, whereas someone in, say, the Mount Cameron or Crockett country pay 86 cents and they get the same level of service that I get in the town, and I'm paying $1.11.
Is it fair? Yeah.
So they never explained those inequities and how they were going to achieve those or balance it. And they kept saying, well, that's for the next council. Well, no, you elected me to make decisions. Let me make decisions. Give me the information. so I can make those decisions.
Of course.
And then the public can either vote me in or vote me out based on my decisions.
Yes.
Right? That's how democracy works.
Mm-hmm.
I felt they were hiding things. I felt there was too many closed-door meetings. I felt there was a different group, not council, that were doing a lot of the moving and shaking.
Mm-hmm.
We hired Brighter Communities as a consultant. So town council had to endorse that. And I said, how many applicants applied for this? And they said there was 5. So I said, where are the other 4? My package.
Right.
Well, staff reviewed it, and staff recommends this one. I said, are staff voting on this, or is the council voting on it? Because my reputation, my value as a councillor is on the line by how I vote.
Mm-hmm.
That's how people judge me.
Yes.
They don't judge staff.
No, they don't. Not at all.
And we can't change staff, but you can change councils and councillors pretty quick. So there was a lot of things that I was very much against this process. And I was a large speaker, but the larger community got engaged. There was resentment. There was a mistrust. There was all these things that happened. So finally, the provincial government evoked legislation, and then they pulled it the day before it was supposed to be enacted. And I think that was a good thing, only because it gave people the option that democracy, in order for it to work, people have to have a voice. People have to have a channel. So now we'll see if that resonates with voters in Antigonish as they go to the poll provincially. Will Tim Houston and his ministers here, like Greg Morrow and Michelle, will they be tainted with this, or are they going to be praised? But whenever you make politics, your best decision is not to make one, because then you don't get anyone upset with you. Once you make a decision, you become polarized. People either like your idea or they don't like your idea. And I think that's what's happening.
Well, I mean, I think the hope is that we just kind of get this sorted out, because there is lots of talk about who's right, and the county wants one thing and the town wants the other. But we know that coming together would make things a lot cheaper, I think, for everyone involved.
Okay, explain that. That's the perception that they put out there. So
yeah, maybe you can explain. We just understand
because I can't explain that, because from what I see at the table, nothing's cheaper. If we were to merge, we'd be paying $1 million more for RCMP. So right away, that
just because of
false.
Them having to cover more area?
No. The town has a police contract with the RCMP. The county has a police contract with the RCMP. So if we were to dissolve the town, we'd be over 15,000. You can Google that, and as a result, we'd be paying $1 million more for RCMP for the exact same level of service what we have now. So it's not cheaper, it's more expensive.
Wasted money. Thank you for correcting me there. That actually does make a lot of sense. So we don't want to waste any extra spending money that we could use for a lot of things that Antigonishers actually need, of course.
So that's why I used I threw out the year there. 2032 is when the county and town's contract with the RCMP expires. Mm-hmm. At that time, the county population will be over 15,000, I'm sure. Right. If we see the projected growth like we are, they will have to pay that $1 million. It's a given then.
Yeah.
Right now, it's not. You don't have to pay it, so why would you? So in 2032, if both councils, if we can fix the water and fix the sewer for the urban, I can see us converging to the point where in 2032, will be 8 years from now, there'll be another municipal election, then councillors can run on the values of amalgamation. Then, because you only get one chance to get married to the county.
Yeah.
You don't want to have it fall under a municipality. You want it to be a regional government. I like regional governments.
Yeah.
You get more funding. And so I can see us converging to the point where good things can happen for both town and county. But you have to sell it to the people, give them the information, and let them have a say. And they can do that by voting people in or voting people out. Or, as I always ask for, let's have a plebiscite with the people. Let them decide.
This is good information. I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to let people understand that in a different way, because, yeah, my impression was that it was going to cost us less if we, went ahead and conjoined, or, did that kind of direction towards it. That was kind of the trajectory. But it actually turns out quite the antithesis. It's
Yeah.
actually quite the opposite.
Where consolidations, I can give you some examples of good amalgamations, like you see it in business. When businesses merge, manpower is lost.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you save money.
Yep.
So instead of paying two CAOs $150,000 apiece, you say we'll eliminate one duplicated system and we'll save $150,000.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, that sounds good, but in practice, what usually happens is that the new CAO says, "Whoa, wait a minute! I'm doing twice the work here.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pay me more, and I need a helper." So now you're paying, say, $50,000 more. Bring that CAO salary up to $200,000.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to hire a helper. What's that helper going to be? $75,000.
Going to cost something. Yeah.
So you only saved $25,000.
Interesting. Yeah, this is all good information, and I'm just learning. So I mean, I don't have much rebuttal to that. But this is an eye opener probably for a lot of people that'll listen to this, not quite understanding exactly what the issues are because we're not as ingrained in them
Right.
as we might think we are.
So do we need 2 recreation directors for a population of 20,000 people? Probably not. But you know what? We had one recreation director. When I was a kid in the 80s, Ralph Henderson was it. And he was hired by both town and county.
Mm-hmm.
And then the county, as they get more money, they broke away and have their own. They never had a planner. They never had a building inspector. They used to piggyback on ours.
Right.
And likewise, they broke away. They really piggyback on our water and sewer. They haven't paid anything for the infrastructure for the sewer plant or the water plant. Yeah, they built their pipelines,
Mm-hmm.
but we built pipelines too. But the $7 to $10 million for the water treatment plant and what the cost of a new sewer treatment plant, why should the town residents have to bear the responsibility of that when we now know that county residents consume 21% more water than town residents? So let's work on these contracts. So instead of the town spending all their money on these things and the county sitting back and saying, it's all good with us.
Of course it would be. Yeah, of course it would
We'll
be.
keep buying it wholesale and we'll retail it to our residents. And we haven't paid a nickel for the water treatment plant. So if a big pipe breaks in transmission, should it be cost shared? I think so.
Yeah.
Because, but what would happen, the press would always say, oh, look at that, town and county are fighting again.
Yeah, that's what most Antigonishers would see, your average citizen.
Because that's how it would be portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you see about the infrastructure and the water and sewer, why wouldn't it be fair that the county pay a little more?
From what you're saying, it only makes sense that we pay our equal share, and that some don't benefit kind of off of the efforts of another.
Streets, that's another thing. Towns are responsible for 100% of all the streets. Where you live out here,
Mm-hmm.
you have a private road.
Mm-hmm.
Who pays for that?
The town.
No.
No.
Where you live here,
County.
your landowner, he has a private road here. He pays 100% of the cost. But if he has to fix it, you end up paying it. Right? He's going to raise your rent.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you live in Cape George, Department of Highways pay for that road. And what I hear from county residents, I don't want my county tax money going to fix roads in the town. I agree. If we were to merge, that's probably what would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they drive in our town roads.
Of course they do. Yeah.
Just like I drive on the highway.
The county,
if I go around the Cape, I'm driving on provincial roads. I pay provincial tax. Just like the residents of Cape George, when they go around the Cape, they pay provincial tax. But I pay town taxes to fix my roads. And they get to benefit from those roads without paying a nickel.
Makes you wonder why they want things to remain the same with that understanding, knowing kind of how it's a little bit one-sided and that there could be a little bit of help on their end. Why not just do it?
Well, if we become one municipality, the urban core will expand, and those roads will then become 100% responsibility of the new municipality.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to lose cost sharing. There's J-class roads. You may want to look up that.
Mm-hmm.
J-class roads, 1/3 comes from the province, 1/3 from the municipality, and 1/3 from the residents. So if you live in a subdivision in the county with a J-class road, your tax rate is going to be increased to pay 1/3 of that cost of the paving.
Oh, wow, okay.
So if they become a unit, like one municipality, the government can walk away from that, say that's part of your urban core. You now own 100% of that road. And
Okay.
those are the details that were not given to us
Yes. Yeah.
in this amalgamation concept. Those were the information that we were lacking to make a valid, sound decision on whether this was good or this was bad. So how can I sell that to the residents if I can't, sitting at the table,
Yeah.
get this information?
Impossible. Impossible.
Yes. So when people tell me we would save money by being one, we would be getting more grant money if we were one. That's not true from where I sit. The provincial government has two different sets of rules. One set of rules for towns,
Yep.
one set of rules for rural municipalities. So we know going in that's an unfair thing.
Yes.
But likewise, the rules for grant money is staggered that way to reflect the reality.
Yep.
We as towns get more infrastructure money than municipalities. Why? Because we have more infrastructure. That costs more money. So we get more cost sharing. So we were to become a county, we would drop that infrastructure money that we were able to get. We get less. So to me, that didn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Well, we'll leave it at that, Sean, and hopefully people can, look at this and get a better understanding of exactly what you're, the relationship between the town and the county and what you're trying to achieve and why people are saying the things that they're saying. And, now we can better understand maybe why there's a little bit of conflict between town and county and or maybe less understand, to be honest. But Sean, I'm wondering, does the town mayor, the newly town stated mayor, does he have any insecurities or do you have any weaknesses?
I'm sure if you ask my wife, she'll, or my kids, they'd probably tell you some. But when it comes to service and it comes to volunteerism, I go all in.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know the game better than most, and I like to share that knowledge as I'm doing with you and your listeners. I want people to be informed. I feel education is the best tool that anyone can have in their toolbox. I could have a hammer if I don't know how to use it.
Absolutely.
It's useless.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if people are educated, they can make decisions that are in the best interest of not just themselves, but for their neighbors and residents.
Mm-hmm.
Being a mayor, you're grassroots. You're dealing with the little items that make people's lives better on every single day. Sidewalks. Like, you push yourself in a wheelchair, you will know that sidewalks are not friendly, but they're safer than being on the street.
Of course, yeah.
Right? So there's always kind of a give and take. If you can leave your office by having the town in a better position than what I was when I got it,
Right.
I'll be happy with that. That's a big thing for me. So I'm trying to get, if you focus on the infrastructure, then the other things will come. If you don't have water, if you don't have sewer, if you don't have good roads, you don't have good sidewalks, everything kind of crumbles. Everything looks like it's in bad shape,
Mm-hmm.
and people will walk away from here and they'll choose to live elsewhere. I think we have a vibrant little town. We have great influx with university students, and they lend themselves in ways that not just economically, culturally, they lend themselves athletic as mentors to our young kids.
Absolutely.
I mean, we all look up to them when we were younger. Your parents may be wise and full of wisdom, but as a child, they're your parents. Like
Yes.
the coach knows more.
Yes.
That person knows more. So the more people can be exposed to those outside elements, the better off people can be.
Mm-hmm.
The better off people can handle any type of diversity or curveballs to them. So we're quite blessed. Like we have a vibrant arts community. We have a vibrant sports community. We have a vibrant multicultural community here as well. And they all feel welcome. They're all ABCers, Antigonishers by choice.
Yep.
So I think we're lucky to live here.
I think so too.
Yeah. And I want to make it better.
And I mean, that's why, the town elected you, because they believe in you, and they're looking forward to the change that you'll, make. One of the big questions that Antigonishers are also asking is, how can we attract more medical professionals towards Antigonish?
That's a good question. My daughter-in-law is a doctor, but she's a specialist. Mm-hmm. So she's attached to the IWK. And unfortunately, there's only one children's hospital in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. So she has no choice but to live in Halifax.
That's her temperament. It's what she loves to do.
Yep. She's a pediatric oncologist, and God love her for doing that type of work. It's very much needed, but it's going to be difficult work, and she knows that. And my son is very supportive to her in that role. He knows when she's had bad days or good days or whatever. So when you talk specialists, they are usually attached to a hospital that has specialized services. So in Antigonish, our regional hospital, we attract a different type of doctor. What we're lacking here is a lot of regular family physicians, family doctors. How do we get them here? Well, we have to, as you mentioned earlier in your podcast here, is the lifestyle, their life-work balance. Yes. Yeah, they can get a job anywhere as a family doctor, but what can our community offer them that enhances their lifestyle? And I think our arts, our university town, our sports, and we're strategically placed. We're 2 hours from Cape Breton. We're 2 hours from the airport in Halifax. So it's not a big trip anymore.
Yeah,
you can hop in your car, go to Halifax, go shop at Costco or whatever, Gateway if you want, and be back here. And good afternoon. Yeah. Let's do it again.
Yeah, we hope that it, it looks, like a place where people want to go and like they can raise their family. It's safe, but I think people are looking for a kind of, excitement or a sense of excitement. Antigonish definitely offers a good, ability to come start a family, a community. But it's kind of about like, what do we offer here? And obviously we're trying to attract people. Do we know why people have left, though?
I think they do exit surveys. So when you're a doctor, I understand that your pay should be the same, no matter what hospital you're working at. But sadly, that's not the reality.
Okay.
We've lost doctors down to the Valley. We've lost doctors down to Yarmouth, where they've offered, obviously, a more attractive package.
Yeah.
We have, like, you could hit a beach from Antigonish. 10 minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
Bang, you're at a beach.
Love the beach.
Bang. We got the Kepik. 10 minutes the other way. We offer a lot, but it's a small town lifestyle that we offer. Yeah. Some people find that attractive. Some people don't. So it's whatever you have to dangle. It's like fishing. Your bait has to attract the right type of fish that you're trying to hook. And so we partner with the county and the province, and we have our doctor recruitment specialists. And I think they're doing a pretty good job. Like, the vacancies are low. But, again, it depends on what our hospital has openings for those specialists.
Right, yeah.
So we're becoming like the ophthalmologist. New Glasgow's more the orthopedic specialist. We have surgeries. We have other things that we offer here that, say, Sherbrooke can't, so Straight Richmond cannot, or Inverness. Mm-hmm. So we have a larger catchment, and that's why, like tomorrow morning, we're going to be on the Hospital Help Day radio.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Bringing money to to support the hospital auxiliary so they can buy things that the government can't.
Oh, that's very cool.
And that in itself doesn't sound like a lot, but when you factor that over the 25 years that CJFX has been putting this on, or 98.9 XFM, that really supports our hospital, which in turn supports doctor recruitment and doctor retention.
Yes.
Because they know they need something and we can offer it to the community. That's good. And it shows community involvement, and they feel valued by working here because of that. So hopefully that lends itself to recruit people here and stay here.
Absolutely. And Sean, what is something that you're grateful for right now, in your life?
Family.
Family.
We grew up in a large family, and you kind of take it for granted. But as you get older, like even running this last campaign, if it wasn't for family, I don't think I would be as successful. Both financially, moral support, helping me like campaign, and it's a very stressful time. Like actually doing the work I find easier than getting elected.
So your wife was obviously, a big
Huge.
importance, and of course, it's so very important to have someone that's got your back.
Absolutely, right? And not only my wife and family. I mean, when social media kind of took off, there's some negative things out there.
Of course,
I was really happy to see people jump in, people that I know off as friends, and now I see them as truly good friends.
Of course.
Had your back and would support you and be argumentative back when people would say false things about you.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, cool. So they would obviously see the values that people were saying I was lacking, and they would say, no, this person has compassion. This person does have commitment to this town. This person does support. I mean, my campaign manager, he actually got mad at me. He said, until you started writing all these things down, I never realized how invested you were with our town. Like, my God.
Your campaign manager said that.
Yeah.
You should have hired me or something. Kidding, obviously, but clearly he didn't know enough about you, or...
Yeah, he said I'm a little too modest, and you have to come out more, and you have to sell yourself more. And it's hard because you're always taught modesty is...
Oh, yeah. It's the main thing, to not put yourself out there is what's best, and to always rely on modesty. But in today's world, it's important to be able to stand up for yourself because of the way that people can approach these kind of conversations. They can just write something or say something,
right,
and it just becomes truth.
Yeah, exactly. And if they have more followers who spread that message, the perception is that more people think that way, but
yes,
it may not be the facts, or it may not be reality. And some people like using, he's spreading misinformation. Well,
there is a lot of that said online.
Tell me what I said that was wrong, and I will correct it, or I will show you why I based my opinion on that.
Exactly. And if it's open to interpretation, then it is an opinion, and it's open to, gradually, more information coming out. It's not a fact.
Right.
That it's, it's constant. So I agree. I think that family and having that support helps triumph all of those little or big hurdles. I know from experience that having a good partner is what makes it all work, because I consider myself a strong individual, but I can't do it on my own. And so your wife allows you to, leave the home, go out and to, do all the things that you're doing. How does it work when you have to balance family and politics? How do you do it? How do you find time for both, or do you have sacrifices have to be made?
Well, I think with any politician, they'll say compromise is probably their biggest tool. There are some things that obviously take away from my family time when you're committed to the town. Likewise, when you're in the town, you know your job. Not everyone is going to love you, and not everyone is going to agree with what you have. People will actually work against you.
Yes.
But typically, what we do, for instance, if we need a sidewalk, one side of the street's going to get the sidewalk, the other side is not. So you're going to have some argument, you're going to have some dissentment
yes.
with neighbors.
Yeah.
You know, because you made a statement, and now they're on one side or the other, very polarized.
Yeah.
But what we see now in politics is different. People will throw things at you, throw slurs.
Mm-hmm.
I showed you a post earlier
Yes.
before the podcast, which I found disturbing.
That someone would connect you with someone who's not you, just because maybe people believe certain things about that person, and maybe those things are true about that person, but that has no correlation
Right,
to you or
yeah.
your
So
character.
to say that I'm another person because they believe my characteristics or personality aligns with them is wrong. That means they don't know me,
Yes, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And this is why I brought you here, to have an opportunity to get to know you. And, you know, that you're not a extension of a Donald Trump or anything like that. Whatever people want to believe, I believe they should, you know, have the right to believe them. And whoever they want to vote for should also be fine. I feel like people, you know, nitpick and want to get involved because of the way social media has been developed. I feel like now they feel like there's a certain responsibility to tell you you're wrong or you're not this or you're not that. I think it's been a little bit overstated, and it's not maybe a symptom of the times, really, with this huge injection of social media. But Sean, just a few more questions
Sure.
before we go, my good man. I just would like to know, what is your favorite spot to go dining in Antigonish?
My wife and I don't like going to restaurants to
Either
dine
do we,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, so I would say if you look at how much money we spend eating out, the wheel probably wins. Takeout,
As it should, yeah.
home, you know. When our children come down, we go to a restaurant. It's used to be the lobster treat. That was kind of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Gabriel, if it's a special occasion, or the Townhouse, or good old Brownstone. And sometimes I just like the Snow Queen, just for home cooked meal.
For a nice breakfast, eh?
Yeah.
Beautiful
And of course, for your birthday, you couldn't say you couldn't go to Mother Webb's, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you can go
Once
to
in a while,
steak. You
yeah,
can head
yeah.
over to what's it there? Pizza Delight. You can get a nice meal there. What about actually? Next question, Sean.
Sure.
What's your favorite Saint of X? Or what's your favorite Saint of X tradition?
That's a tough one. When you're a student, we used to have Burmac. That always was a big week-long event.
That's the hockey tournament.
Yeah,
right?
they eliminate that. It was a fundraiser too for X Project, and I was involved with X Project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did they get rid of Burmac? Was that just because it? I mean, it was getting a little out of control.
It was getting out of control, and the behaviors were. It took away. It wasn't just a hockey game. It was
about fighting and
yeah,
violence, and it was pretty. From what I saw in the last few years of it, it was getting a little crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it pitted a house against another house, and so Saint of X tried to curb that. Yeah, so Mackay's, they became co-ed, one floor girls, one floor guys, try to tame down the behavior of the boys. It's just like anything. You get a rowdy crowd and
got to calm the boys down
and get some liquor involved, and all of a sudden they're not clear thinkers or a lot of followers.
Of course. Yeah, and the amount of testosterone and hormones at that age, it's just...
So homecoming took on a different life. When I was a student, homecoming, the students went away and the alumni come in. Well, now it takes on a different life. St. of X doesn't allow a lot of parties on campus, so it pushes those parties off campus into our town. And then I mean, you like to see it, and it's one or two times a year, but there's a cost to that. Like, it costs anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 to bring in extra RCMP for that weekend.
Yep.
St. Patrick's Day now became
Is a big event.
party center. And it's not just St. FX students. They bring their friends from away
Of course,
to
yeah.
come.
Yeah.
Hey, come experience this too. Graduation was always a kind of a nice thing because people finished off their careers at St. FX with graduation. Parents came and they're very proud, and they're always, seeing what the town was that their children lived in for 4 years, what it was like and what it offered. And I remember seeing new parents in grocery stores because if you're not from here, we can tell, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. You
And
notice them.
Yeah, I remember one lady was in the grocery store and she asked me where I could help her find something. I said, sure, it's over here. And when I went over, then I saw her son, who was a member of the St. FX men's basketball team. And I said, excuse me, but is this your mother? Yes, it is. So I introduced myself to her, told her how proud we were of her son for playing basketball for St. FX and how it brought excitement to the town and how the town rallied behind, and we would like to see her son, who was successful in the basketball court, succeed in life.
Yes.
And she was like, wow. She said, I wanted my son to go to a big university in Ontario, but he wanted to have the small town feel of
Really?
St. FX. And she said, you just answered to me after 4 years, me asking why he came here. And I said, well, okay, cool. And son didn't know me, right? I was just someone in the crowd that watched the game.
But that just shows the impact that someone can be having on someone that you might not assume, but just from taking action, just from doing what they do, putting themselves forward in a hopefully positive way, has a trickle-down effect, and it reaches people, and then you can see how other people can react with one another. And I think that's what a small town really has to offer.
Yeah.
We see each other, and a lot of times we don't even know who each other are, but we see each other enough that we say, like, I know that person.
Yeah.
Right? It's beautiful.
Likewise, the X-ring. It's
Yes,
unique,
yes.
and when you see that in the crowd, you automatically have a connection with somebody that no one else in the crowd has.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful, Sean. Just two last questions
Sure.
before I let you go. Good, sir. Any books or podcasts that you listen to personally? What do you like to listen to?
I'm not big
or
on
read.
podcasts,
I
although
know you talked about your reading. But
yeah, and as I mentioned to my gracious host here, it wasn't until my son got diagnosed with type of a learning, not really a learning disability, just a hurdle, like a barrier that we were able to overcome, that I
Right.
discovered that, wait now, I have that. So I don't find reading enjoyable. I never did.
Mhm.
It was a task to me. I have to read every single word. My oldest boy can read certainly faster than he can talk,
Okay.
and he talks. He can't talk fast. But it's just when you're a great reader, you enjoy books, you
Yes.
see the imagery.
Yes.
I don't have that. So I'm great. So I always say I'm analytical in my thinking, but I think it's because it's the way I read.
Mhm.
I become analytical, so I have to break everything down.
Yep.
And I have to stop and mentally think about it. So I like murder mystery books.
Okay.
John
okay.
Grisham, that's always a gift at Christmas or my birthday. My kids will always know to get me a book.
Mhm.
Robert Ludden, those type. I'm not so much into podcasts because I like to listen to other people, but I'd rather engage rather than just listen to
Yes,
someone else's
yes.
opinion. I enjoy newspapers and reading articles online, but I like to have that feedback
Mhm.
once in a while where I can debate and discuss
Yes.
and think that. So, I don't know. The books I like, I'll still stick with my murder mysteries. And I download audiobooks
Mhm.
from the library, of course, but
Yep.
that's when I'm traveling in a car. If I don't like listening to music, I'll just listen to an audiobook. But I'd still rather read it because it does take me longer, but I'll get through it and I feel I accomplished something.
Yeah, I love picking up a nice book, to be honest. audiobooks are fun too, but and just like you, I think that like even um, when I was younger, I had trouble reading properly. I couldn't, sound out the words, pronounce them. I read very slowly. Uh, but as I got older, I probably the most well-read person I know at this point. Like no one reads more than me. But I think it was that period in my life where I just felt like I was being resisted from being able to read. I felt like I was a good reader, but obviously I couldn't have been because I, had to have restrictions on some of the things I did as a child. But things happen, and we all kind of have, in a sense, a disability, right? You
Yeah.
could look at any person and say that person's better at math, this person's better at this person can't jump as high. You could say that everybody has a disability, and I think that it's a good way to kind of look at society is that we all have our, particularities. Some, more advantageous in one realm and some in the other. But that's what makes us, a great society is that we all have our strengths and our weaknesses and that we, use those things to create better relationships with one another.
Absolutely.
That's
yeah.
exactly what I think, man. So it's not exactly, a problem. It's just we're all different. Sean, what would you say? So this will be our last question. Um, what would you say to someone who's, a young man, young woman, not really involved in any kind of politics or any committees, maybe they're doing a few things at school or even just thinking about it. What would you say to someone that's looking to take on, the great responsibility of representing people in politics?
The first thing I tell them is try it, do it. Get involved. You may not want to be the candidate right off the bat. You may not be in a position to know or experience it, but become part of someone else's campaign. Work with them.
Yeah.
Follow them. Find that mentor that will elevate your knowledge, elevate your experience, elevate your excitement so you can become that better person.
Mm-hmm.
I know, although I've been in politics for 20 years, I know I'm not the best public speaker, but I force myself to do it.
Yes.
I sing in a church choir, but when I have to sing a solo in front of the church, you get nervous.
Of course.
Although I've been doing it for about 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
you still get nervous. And that to me is a good feeling because there's a thing called confidence, but I don't think everyone is as confident as they let on.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right? So everyone will have some, as you said, not everyone have the same blueprint. And that's a good thing because we're all different. We're all unique. But you can elevate your game in certain areas, improve this, because your other part of your game can carry you. So people see...
It's like being talented in a sport and not actually putting in like the fundamentals or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you could be basketball. I mean, you can see great players
All the time,
hit the foul shot line and
Shaq, for example.
terrible. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
That's something you can work on in
He could have
yourself.
spent 5 more minutes in the gym and he would have been a lot better. But he had, and that's exactly true. Shaq was great and maybe the most dominant player in NBA history. It's hard to deny that. But he was out of shape often.
Yeah.
And he couldn't hit a free throw. But, I mean, he's top 10 in scoring, many championships, considered the most dominant. Just kind of shows how, like you were saying, you can make those tweaks and the difference it'll make.
Yeah, so if someone wants to get involved with politics and try to start off in a service club, they're always crying for people. They're looking for volunteers everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But people, because society is different now, they're in their bedroom on social media. There must be an app for that.
Fair enough.
There's not all the time. Sometimes you got to roll up your sleeves, get down and dirty, and do things.
Mm-hmm.
Like when my boys were involved with sports, the Lions Club would sponsor the basketball team. But we knew every year the Lions Club had a highway cleanup.
Right.
So on Saturday, you'd have to roll up your sleeves, get your old clothes, and go pick up garbage along the number 7. Why? Because you're doing it alongside of the men
Mm-hmm.
that were in the Lions Club.
Yes.
And now there's women in the Lions Club too. And it's a great organization. And they give back all the money they collect.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a win-win. So if you want to feel part and connect to the community, join a service club. Start off that way. Go to the library, volunteer. Go to any sports team and see if they need. You may not be a coach, but you can be a manager. You can be help organize, or there's lots of places. Go to the hospital.
Yeah.
They're always looking. The RK McDonald. I mean, they're
Yeah.
always looking for volunteers to do something. Just help out. Give of yourself, and it does make our community stronger.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautifully put, Sean. And I think anyone who's listening knows that, just putting yourself out there, taking action, trusting in the process, and, seeing what happens, because that's kind of what is on the other side of any of our actions is the unknown.
That's right.
You just trust if you're a believer in God, or, however you get, that bolstering that supports you when you have tough moments. I think everything's just on the other side of a bit of faith. And just going out there and trying it, just like you did today. Haven't talked to you in a while, and I asked you to come on the podcast, and you, I think, were the quickest ever turnaround I've ever had for asking, and then someone coming on the podcast. So,
Oh, really?
oh yeah, usually last minute, day of, people need another week for whatever reason. So I almost thought, that on the day you would need another reason for like the next week. But you're the quickest turnaround, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. Sean, I'd love to have you back in like a year or so to kind of rehash some of these things that you're talking about that we're trying to do for the town. If you'd be willing, and just, kind of have
Absolutely.
have that conversation
Yes,
about where
yes.
you're at and how you're doing, and if there's any way we can help, or if there's anything that we need to know, or so we're all just very supportive. For the people I've talked to, we're really looking forward to the things you're going to do with the community, growing up in Antigonish, spending so much time on town council. Congratulations, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to the show. It was like I said, it's my first podcast, and from the sounds of things, it may not be my last with you. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and good luck to your show here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Until next time, obviously the camera's off at this point, but we're waving at the dead camera. Everybody have a great night. And until next time, we'll see you soon. This is Janai Sampson and Sean Cameron. Have a good night.
Good night.